Okay, I'm all ready. All set. Do I need to share my screen or?
Yes, you do. And if you could share the lunch and learn slide, please.
Have my screen shared. The lunch and learn. What piece do we need?
Oh, we usually share the lunch and learn slide, but if you don't have it, that's okay. You can just go ahead and begin.
Okay. So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Brandon Roberts. I work on the decision support team, and I will be leading the lunch and learns today. If you have any questions, feel free to just post in the chat. Otherwise, Sabrina, we didn't have any pre-submitted questions, correct?
No, we don't.
Okay. So does anyone have any questions right now? I think if it's just Morel, I see on right now. Yep, Morel raising your hand. I'll go ahead and let you talk. You can come off mute. What sort of question do you have?
I have a question about the change state action in a case entity.
Okay.
More specifically about permissions on that.
Okay. So so essentially, like with the case, the change state is that the default change state action, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Are you looking to add like permissions to that action for like more users to use?
Well, I'm not exactly sure. What I've run into is that I have a development environment where if you right click and choose change state, you get all of the states available to you.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have a test environment that's housed at our end client that has the permissions are changed. And I do remember that at first there were no permissions. They didn't have access to change state. And so I did something to add those, but even the administrator doesn't have access to all of them. And I don't know how to change that back.
So that is odd. What version of the product are you
on? We are on version 6, 6.19 for development and 6.10 for the test and production environments.
Okay. Let me see. Let's do. So I believe I'm on 619 here. So let me see if I can recreate this real quick. And let's see. Now should make it simple. Next one, test one. Pick one here. Change the real quick. And let's do. Okay, so we have a case created here. So here on this change state, they're not seeing all the cases, or they're not seeing all the new states, even as an admin user.
Correct.
Okay, so let's see, case configuration. Does this happen for, if we add a new state, are they able to see any new states at all? Or?
We didn't try that. So there's probably like 13 states. And at any given time, you would be able to reasonably move between a couple of them, like 6 or 7 of them coexist.
Mhm.
So they shouldn't. Go ahead.
So what sort of, as far as I know, we should just need permission. As long as we have like admin permissions, you should be able to see every state.
Well, that's what I thought.
Do we happen to have any sort of action visibility rules or any sort
Maybe.
of visibility configurations here? Because could be we might be somehow hiding certain states based on like user groups.
That's
So
completely possible. But if I did that, I accidentally applied them to the administrator and I didn't mean to.
okay, so do you remember your steps in sort of recreating this? Because as far as I know, there shouldn't be any sort of as long as an admin user has admin privileges or permissions, they should be able to see everything. On the folder containing those states, does the admin use, well, it's still an admin user, so they should still be able to see everything. Have we made any changes to the permissions on the folder level that contains the cases?
Probably, but I would have done it last May and I don't know what I would have done. So you're saying to check the permissions on the containing folder.
Yeah, I checked the permissions on the containing folder and check action visibility rules. As far as I know, those are the only things that could really control if you can see case states and permissions, or case state anyway.
Okay. So that's permissions on the folder that holds the cases and then action visibility rules. Okay. That's all I really needed. I just needed to know where to start.
Okay. Glad I could help there.
All right. Thank you.
Mhm. Let's see. What can I show off in the time that I have? Well, since there's no one here, I will think. I want to talk about some little tips and tricks I think I found while working at the company. And these could be things that Rail, you might already know, but I'll just go through and just show a little trick, a couple little things I've learned about the product in the last couple of years I've worked here. So the first thing I learned pretty recently, and I'm embarrassed to say it, but I'll say it anyway. Here, when you go into a actual defined data structure, I don't know if anyone knows this, but I use the sort. I found out we can use the sort properties action here, and this actually sorts the data structure names or data structure members in alphabetical order. So if you have a case where you're just trying to find a data structure and you have like a structure that just has like 20, 30 different data members, you can use the sort properties action here, and that'll automatically put them in alphabetical order. That was a game changer to me. I just found that out yesterday. I'm also the resident repo expert here at Decisions on the support team. So a couple of tips and tricks about the repository as far as setting it up goes, or troubleshooting issues. Normally, when you do like a design repository and add to a project action, there's two parts here: the actual adding to the project itself, and the actual. Actually, let me do something simpler. Use the lunch folder. Adding to the project here, which will then sort of just throw that in where you need it to go. You can add the single folder or the content, and it's done pretty much anytime you want to add something to the project. And so by now, this is actually add to the project. Then there's also the commit action that actually commits it to the repository. Right now, my repo server isn't up, so we'll probably get an error here. As far as I was pretty sure, yeah. So it's spinning here. We'll get an error in a couple minutes. That will probably just say we can't connect to the repository. And when that pops up, I want to see through it to show it. Yep. So there's two, and work with the repository, there's two tricks to sort of understanding how to troubleshoot issues in it. Normally, you'll get like a commit verification page, or if there's an error on the repository level, you'll get like a little pop-up that says error in update module, error in delete module, error somewhere in the repository. In that case, if you don't get like a little notification like we did here, you'll actually want to go to the repository to check for log messages there instead of the client server. Lots of times customers get confused and they say, well, this isn't committing, and I'm checking the logs here and I'm not seeing anything saying why that's failing. It's because the logs will actually be coming from the repository instead of actual the environment you're doing a check-in from. Another little trick I've learned recently and helps me navigate when like there's an issue with customers' folder trees is this little icon here. There's a lot of different navigation parts here. So say for some reason your folder tree isn't looking right and you need to get to the logs. You can always use this settings to take you right to the settings. And from there, you should have access to most of the folders or most of the settings you need there on the environment. It's also the about page that a lot of customers don't know about. It actually shows the version, the file storage location, actually the database name that we're using here. So if you're ever confused about what sort of database is being ran, you can always confirm that here. You can always confirm the file storage location here as well. Let's see. Tips and tricks. Oh, yes. So we also have the system tools here that we use a lot for diagnosing like performance problems or database structure issues. There's one really handy tool in the event viewer, and I think it's in version 6 and newer versions of 6. There are the code compile results report. So any sort of code compiles that occur will show up here. Any errors will also show up here with the actual error message. and the data structure status report. These are really good for just sort of seeing what data structures are in a bad state or haven't been loaded properly. And this has every data structure on the instance. So you can even edit and sort of recompile data structures as you need from here. Let's see. There's also boot history here that shows anytime the instance was restarted, the reason that you the reason for the restart will be here. And in normally, this is a good tool as well. You also have the thread jobs tab report that shows all the jobs running on your decision instance at the time, and essentially showing what queue they're running on and whether they're actually running or waiting, what order they're actually in on the queue here. These are some really good tips as far as troubleshooting, trying to figure out what is going on the environment. Next, we have the flow management tool that we use, specifically where is it? I think it's the flow structure report. This report is really key in showing what steps are running in what flow. This keeps a list of every step that's running in every flow. And so you're trying to keep track of when this step executed or what happened with this step. You can always just come to this report and look at that at a deeper level. Let's see. Any more? I think you're also aware of this, the flow management tool. There are flows that have gotten stored or in some sort of odd state. You can always select it here. And if we have the step details, you can run a step, or you can rerun a step, or you can revert the flow back to the step or have the flow start at this step. You can even tell it what path to run through using this tool here. Let's see. And last but not least, I'm sure you're aware of the logging tool that keeps track of the logs, but also the profiler tool. This is a really handy tool to see how long things are running on your environment. So say you're having, you notice performance on certain flows are running slow, or something isn't, something's hanging here, or normally a performance issue is where we would come for this. So if things are running slow, or a scheduled job is taking forever, or decisions just eating up a lot of memory or CPU usage, you can come here and see what flows here are really running and are taking the longest time here. And you can even go in by level, just seeing what sort of steps are running here. We have ORM, non-clear, most of these are just default flows. As a tip, normally you can ignore this thread job service because this just keeps all the thread jobs. Specifically, if you see something that takes a long time that isn't a default thread job or one of these services, it's most likely a flow running. And even then it'll say what sort of flow it is. And then you can even drill down to what steps are taking the longest, or what steps are running in this flow. Or if it's running a lot of fetches, you can see how long those fetches are taking here. So those are some of the tools we use and some tips and little tricks that we use here, at least on the support team, to sort of troubleshoot and assist in figuring out what's going wrong with customers' instances. There's also this servers tool here that actually lets you know the server name. This is really good when trying to figure out which server is running as job server, or what servers are in the cluster. So normally this is used for sort of cluster tools, but you can see here, number 6 of the entry, the current entry for this instance is alive, is, this is the one running, is it this node or the other node, is job server is set to false. And so what that means is on a cluster, you can always tell which node in the cluster is going to be running the jobs here. Can be job servers normally set to one node on the cluster. It can be set on both, but normally it's set as one, because normally we just have one just running jobs on that node. Let's see. Any other tools? Oh, that's also a really good tool here. in case, I'm sure you use the repository as well. This system designer's repository report is a really good tool of just making sure your resources in order. One of the first things I check when a customer says, hey, this doesn't match what I have in dev, or I'm having an issue here. This is one of the first places I go to check the revision of the current revision of the project, as well as the resources by the project. So normal test for me is to get the most latest revision and then check to see if any resources are here. Normally, if they're not, you won't see them on the report, and the revision ID won't reflect that. In cases where there's like an error on checkout and this doesn't give the correct revision ID, this is a great tool to actually see that. There's also the project differences report here. This wants to load. As long as you have connections to the repository, you can use this calculate differences to see the actual difference between the version of the project on your server versus the repository. Oh, no problem. I think, let's see. So we'll give it a few more minutes. Unless Morel, you have any questions, we'll give it a few more minutes to see if anyone else needs to join, or. That's all I really have for today.
Okay, well, all the attendees have left the call, so that we can safely stop the webinar here, if it's okay with you.
Yep, that sounds good to me.
Okay. Well, thank you, Brandon. Appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay, have a great day.
All right, you too. Bye.
Thanks.